call to order the Tuesday, August 15, 2023 Independence Charter Review Commission meeting. Lindsay, would you please take the roll?
Summer.
Here.
McDonald.
Present.
Casey.
Here.
Huff.
Here.
Lathram.
Here.
Allender.
Here.
DeHart.
Here.
Frakes.
Here.
Waters.
Here.
Steele. Here. Boatright.
Here.
We have a quorum. Next is approval of the August 1st, 2023 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any questions, comments, changes?
Nope. Make a motion to approve those minutes.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next is announcements. Do we have any announcements from any of the members? I don't have any. Does the staff? Okay. Okay. Got quite a few documents emailed to you and handed out tonight, so I hope you've had a chance to look over those. I want to start back on Article 7 on 7.2. Lindsay emailed to you a kind of a red line version prepared by the law department. I had also drafted some proposed language to it, so I don't know. I'm hoping everyone had a chance to look at both of those. The draft that I made was, I think I had talked about this at the meeting, but I hadn't put it in writing yet. This incorporates the provision that I wanted if there's a referendum petition, so that it does not, it wouldn't stop any contract that was enacted by ordinance. So it removes those. And then I also added the other exemptions from a referendum. Those are budgetary, capital program, ordinances relating to appropriation of money, levy of taxes, zoning or salaries of city officers or employees. And then I'm recommending taking out all of the kind of convoluted language on dates and times and the language that we talked about at the last meeting that we believe is in there because of the enactment, the effective date of ordinances. So I'd like to hear your comments on those two different versions and let me know what you think.
Go back and look at 2.22, I think it's perfect. It makes provisions that it has some exceptions of ordinance that go into effect immediately. Then it says that for 10 days, the ordinance kind of put on hold. Of course, that gives the time for someone to file a notice of intent. And if they don't, then the ordinance goes into effect. And if someone does file a notice of intent, if they don't perfect that by following through, then the ordinance goes into effect on the 31st day. I think it's a win-win for everyone. It protects the citizens of Independence as well as does not delay the enactment of ordinances. It provides for the immediate effect of certain ordinances, and then it provides for the enactment of other ordinances as I've just outlined. So I propose that we leave 2.22 alone and 7.2 alone. It's very clear to me, and it seems like it's the most prudent way to go. It protects everyone.
As we revisited last meeting and referred back to 2.2 with the 7.2 is where we are at the starting point. I totally agree that it's if if there's something that is to be an ordinance immediately, the city council can do that, but if there is an objection or someone is going to, or voters are going to try to kind of recall some ordinances or object to them, they have at least the time. And the 2-2 is why we have the revisit, because we knew we would hit it in section 7. That's what I have in my notes. I'd have to agree with Commissioner Allender that I think both of them, in the red, what it says, it refers to 2-2, doesn't it? Section 2-2 of the charter goes into effect immediately upon the first final passage by the council. I
Did we
agree.
agree to, did we already pass changes to 2.22, or did we push that off? Is it possible for us to revisit that?
I think we did vote on it, it passed, but we certainly can reconsider it.
They did vote on them,
Yes.
correct? Yeah. Yes, you have voted on changes. Yes, you can revisit them and change it again.
Okay, so if we went back and voted again on 2.22 and took it back to its original language, are you, Mr. Allender, are you recommending that 7.2 not be amended at all?
7.2, and my reading goes right along with 2.22. Excuse me. I mean, I think it's perfect the way it's done, because again, if someone doesn't file a notice of intent, within 10 days it goes into effect. And if they do, then if they don't perfect it within 30 days, then the 31st day it goes into effect. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. We don't have this delay where a referendum could be filed and everything is in limbo. I remember the city manager's comments too. It's worked perfectly. There's been no problem.
Any other comments on that?
Yes, I know that when we read the current 7.2, that we were all a little mystified by the language, but now that we put it in perspective, I have to agree with Mr. Allender too, that it really makes a lot of sense, and that it seems like it's a good balance between getting ordinances placed into effect at a particular time and allowing voters time to voice their opinion.
Anything else? Okay, let's take up 2.22 first. Mr. Cover, do we need to do a motion to reconsider? Or can we just do it?
Technically, since you've already voted on it, it should be a motion. I mean, that would be the way to officially bring it back up since you voted on it. Otherwise, and I don't, to not do it that way means at any point anyone could really bring anything up, and I don't
Okay.
think that's the goal. So yes, I would say that
Okay.
if you're wanting to talk about 2.22 again, that you've already approved, I would say it would be a motion to reconsider that that section, and assuming that passes, then you can talk about it and make any changes you want.
Madam
Okay.
Chairman, I
Oh,
make
wait.
a recommend, I make a motion.
Just a second before you make the motion. If I remember my Roberts Rules of Order, it needs to be someone who voted yes to change it that makes the motion to reconsider
Not with 7.2 leading into it, but.
on
okay.
2.22.
On 2.22, it has to be someone who was in the majority.
Right.
If that's what you're asking.
Yes,
That
and
has
that
to
would have been a
make,
yes.
that has to make the motion. Otherwise, and the reason is because otherwise, someone who's in the minority could just keep,
Right.
bringing it up over and over again.
Even
Okay,
if 7.2 is mentioned, 2.2?
We're just doing
I gotcha.
2.22 now.
But doesn't
So
the
if you
new
can-
7.2 mention 2.2 is what
It
I'm
does,
getting-
it does, yeah. So
Okay.
if you can remember how you voted,
I can pull up the minutes right now and see, that's what I'm looking to see.
I don't know if I can make a motion, but I know I voted.
Okay, so it looks like Summer made a motion to approve the edits, McDonald seconded. Ayes were Summer, McDonald, Casey, Latham, DeHart, Waters, Boatright, Nose, Huff, and Allender.
Okay, someone who voted yes.
I'll
You wanna
make a
Make the
motion.
motion? Okay, you want to make a motion to reconsider,
Reconsider two.
and it's 2.22, correct?
I second.
Second? All in favor of reconsideration, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we are now reconsidering it, and is there a motion to, leave 2.22 as it now exists in the city charter?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Second? Mr. Allender seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay,
So to be clear, it goes back to
Yeah.
the original, okay.
yeah, I don't think, we might want to double check if that affected any other vote we've taken. I don't recall that it did, but I might check on that after this meeting. Okay, now let's go back to 7.2. If we leave 7.2 with the wording that is currently in the charter, is there any support for my red line that, on the language that I drafted?
So this is this right here?
No.
No,
This
it's
is
this,
the one you drafted?
Yeah,
it's this
the-
page,
the
it says
red-
Jackie's recommendation at the top, it's a single,
Yeah.
it's a single sheet, that's what she's referring to.
I'm just talking about the red underlined part at the bottom.
Well, I think if we did that, it would contradict 2.22. So I believe that would seem best served just leaving 7.2 the way it is.
How does that contradict? I'm just talking about the red portions.
So the red just has to do with. You're not getting involved with collective bargaining agreements or wages or salaries.
Yeah, if,
Or staff.
like we discussed, and I understand from Mr. City Manager and our city councilor, that most contracts in Independence are approved by resolution, but there are some that have to be approved by an ordinance. So this language was in, I found it somewhere in some other existing charter, where contracts are taken out of that. You can't have a referendum on a contract.
These are basically exceptions.
Yes.
You can see that being added to the bottom of it.
I think that would be added to 2.22. Wouldn't you think?
In both places.
No, I'm saying if something needs to be added, 2.221 makes exception, so that these words just go into immediate effect. So if 2.221 is not complete
this is specifically for referendum petitions.
rather than an ordinance.
This is specifically for referendums which would stop the effectiveness of an ordinance. We don't want these items to be able to be stopped.
Well, that's 2.22 does that is regarding referendum, if you go down to 2.222,
Right.
that's exactly what it addresses.
Okay, let me pull it back up.
Page 8.
What did we change when we changed 2.32 to 4?
We didn't change anything.
So we agreed to 2.2, then why did we bring it back up to that? I'm just kind of lost.
We had originally changed it so that ordinances, unless they state otherwise, were effective immediately upon signature by the mayor. Going back to 10 days, unless they say otherwise. I don't believe Article 2 is where we want to put this referendum exception.
I see what you're saying too.
I think they need to be in 7 somewhere.
Okay, I just want to, I'm going to try to clarify this for me mostly. So 2.22 in section 1D includes any ordinance relating to a specific contract. So the following ordinance shall go into effect immediately upon final passage unless they specify a later time, any ordinance relating to a specific contract. So that's one that shall go into effect immediately. So 7.2 currently says, the registered qualified voters of the city by referendum shall have the power to reject any ordinance passed by the council, except an ordinance which, in accordance with paragraph 1 of section 7.2, goes into effect immediately upon final passage unless the council specifies a later date. So
The council could say this contract goes into effect, this ordinance passing this contract goes into effect on 30 days, in 30 days.
I think there's a I would say there's a difference between the ordinance going into effect and the contract being effective. You could have an ordinance that goes into effect immediately for a contract that starts, 3 months down the road. I guess so again, if we're going under the idea of looking at what we have currently, it seems to me that the contract issue is addressed, maybe I'm missing something here, but the contract issue is addressed to the extent that the ordinance goes into effect immediately. If the council says, this doesn't go into effect until later, then it is opening itself up to a referendum that it didn't need to. Sort of unnecessarily, for that maybe intentionally or not. But as long as that ordinance goes into effect immediately, then, contracts are already accepted out. It does.
Right, unless the ordinance didn't say immediately.
Agreed. It says they shall go into effect immediately unless they specify a later time. So, and I don't know, Zach, is that something do you know if that's something we've done before, regularly, in any certain situations that you can recall?
The only instance I can recall, Jeremy, is the pit bull ban or lifting of it, once the council passed that ordinance rescinding the ban, they put a 60-day moratorium in place until the effective date to allow city staff to kind of prepare for that. That is the only time where I can remember council taking action to intentionally delay the effective date.
Madam Chairman, I think that it might clarify if we focus on one word. I think I see where you're coming from, and that's called existing. That makes sense to you? So it wouldn't affect any existing. Is that what we're trying to accomplish? Does that make sense to me, as you wouldn't be changing stuff halfway downstream? Any existing contract, that's the red and part in red, existing.
I think that is my concern. And I
So
think
a
it's
referendum
possible.
wouldn't cancel a running contract, or
And
you
I-
couldn't get politics, I got you.
And I think that is still, even though it may never happen, I think that is a possibility. It could happen under 2.22.
You could have guidance with 7.2.
Yeah. For referendums.
That's right. Yeah, because I read it about 18 times real fast. So existing, I think, is the key word here. Mr. Allender,
I'm sorry.
existing, are you?
I'm not following you, Bruce. Where are you with these?
So I'm kind of picking up 2.22, we got, is gonna stay the same as what I think we just voted on. But if I'm reading Jackie's recommendation, which I think our key word is existing. I think that I know that she's put wording in here. So a referendum or an ordinance couldn't affect existing contract. And I think that is right, that I've read it. The key word, I believe, is existing. And I think it does fit in 7.2, so you don't talk yourself out of the abilities in 2.2.2.
Well, my only point was,
Right, but here's, well, 2.2 would stay the same, but the word exists.
when you go back and look at 2.22,
Right, because
there's
this is not
something
nothing.
that needs to be added to 2.221. It said the following words shall go into immediate effect immediately upon final passage unless they specify a later date. If there was something that needed to be added, it goes to A through H, then fine, I would agree with that. There are certain things, I thought that 2.22 kind of covered everything, but if it doesn't, I'm open. But,
Okay, I don't know if there's any interest in this group to add the kind of exception language that I drafted. If there's not, we'll go forward.
I personally have trouble with all the verbiage with the times and all that stuff that the old 7.2 has in there, if it's already covered under 2.22. And I like what we have with the recommendation. It cuts through a lot of the verbiage, and it also says that as long as it doesn't adversely affect anything that's already in place.
So I take it as a secondary. So what you're saying, I believe, the 7.2 is a little repetitive to 2.22.
Yes.
That says an ordinance or referendum couldn't be stopped with an existing, like cut something off, or a collective bargaining agreement. That's the way I read it. I think that is good language. And I don't think that it affects 2.2. I think it enhances as 2.22, is what I think the word existing is key here. Because it certainly doesn't pull anything from 2.2. It's a good rail and backstop to me.
well, Bruce, look at this. I mean, I agree that, you had some repetitive language. The language is contained in section 2.22. But I believe that we should leave in the language saying that city by referendum shall have the power to reject the ordinance passed by the city council, except an ordinance which in accordance with paragraph 1 of section 2.22 goes into effect immediately. And doesn't that get the job done?
For clarity purposes, I like the recommendation. You know, for your average Joe that's just trying to read this thing,
Well, the problem is that it doesn't refer back to section 2.22.
then maybe that's what we need to be doing, is adding something that says refer back to 2.22.
That's what I was just reading, suggesting that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Mark, I think what we found was that there was a flaw that would leave some things in limbo. If we stayed with our change to 2.22, where everything would go into effect immediately, and then a referendum would come out, it would leave some things very much in limbo that would be very confusing. We had a great example. I think the pit bull was the example where we would put a hold on the pit bull ban, and then someone gets a pit bull or gets rid of a pit bull or whatever, and it would be in this limbo period. So that's where we felt like the checks and balances were actually appropriate in 2.22. The timing, and then the referendum then matches it, and it doesn't leave so much opportunity for a limbo. Am I saying that right? The rest of the,
Yeah, I think that, that's why we just voted to
yeah.
reverse our decision
Right,
on 2.22. Okay, does anyone have a motion?
Well, I just want to clarify, Jackie, if you could
Okay.
help us, you think that this additional language then would help us not miss something potentially that could be a real issue for the city?
I do think that.
Okay.
And I know that in addition to these contracts, that we definitely do not want to be able to pause because of a referendum petition. We need these other exclusions in there too. We need them to be clear somewhere in Article 7. And I think 7.2 is a good place to put it, and we may probably need to make it its own sentence.
So it reads registered qualified voters of the city by the referendum shall have the power to reject any ordinance by the council except an ordinance which affects any existing contract the city is party to, including collective bargaining or other contracts between the city and its officers and employees, and extends the budget to the capital program or any ordinance relating to appropriations of money, levy, taxes, zoning, or salaries of city officers or employees.
Or we could just add it as a separate sentence at the end of 7.2 and just start it with
So take out the struck
a
language.
referendum.
So
A referendum shall not affect.
Well, why don't we just state that we're going to do an extra paragraph, but in addition to the, let's see what the language says.
Can everyone please make sure their mics are on? We want to make sure the audio's getting picked up. Thank you.
I think that makes the most sense to me. Leave the language as it is, add that sentence.
Because it refers to 2.22.
Right.
Just would say the referendum process does not affect existing contracts.
Et cetera.
As
Yes.
additional
Yes.
paragraph on section 7.2.
Yeah, we could do that.
I'm going with that.
Okay.
All right.
Did you get that, Lindsay?
I think so. So I've got it up there where I was starting, but then you want the rest of your sentence,
Yeah.
correct?
Essentially, so this subsection shall not apply to any of the things that are listed there. Is that what we're trying to do as a standalone sentence?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, should we put in addition, because we've already referenced section 2.22 up above?
We could do that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Mr. Allender, did you want to start that sentence with in addition,
I would
comma?
think, in addition, I guess you'd even be more fair to say addition to the provisions of section 2.22.
This section shall not apply to any existing.
So take,
I think so. I think that's what they're doing.
okay.
How's the cookie?
Is this what?
I can't see it.
I don't think that that's good.
What?
I think it needs to read more like the referendum process shall not,
Instead of this section?
yes, yes. Or something similar to that.
Okay.
Leave in addition, the referendum.
Mr. Allender, what do you think?
I would make that a separate paragraph.
Oh,
I would
we
say
can do
that
that.
in addition to the provisions of section 2.22. No, I didn't put that in very well.
No, I don't think it needs that.
Okay.
That's twice.
Yeah. Okay, what do we think about that?
I don't know, I don't think it's not apply.
Okay.
Or, maybe instead of shall not apply, shall not be used?
I think that's
Shall
something
not
like it.
be. Shall not be used, I don't know, what used.
Refer, maybe, refer to any existing.
Shall not be used to reject. That's the language in 7.2.
Is it? Yeah. That matches up much better.
Oh, okay.
When you say extends to the budget or capital program, I'm a little unclear on that. saying applies to the budget or capital program, or do you mean?
I took that language from, I think, the model
Oh, okay.
charter, but let me look at it. Let's see. Yeah, that extends to could be better. Related to?
Related to, or, yeah, I think related.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think related to would be better.
Yeah, I think, I agree.
I'm still having trouble with that, used to reject any existing contract. I'm trying to think of a better way to word that, I can't.
Oh, it should be any ordinance? Any ordinance? Shall not be used to reject any ordinance related to, but the related to there.
Well, when you said new paragraph, it's, we're all open.
I don't know. We were.
Did you say related to? Is that what you said?
This shall not apply. Can we just use that?
Yeah.
To apply to any ordinance?
Or apply to any existing contract.
That's what it says. That's exactly what it affects. Any existing contract.
But I'm looking at what she's got typed up there.
On the red here, that's exactly, that describes everything we've got in one sentence, and then we got 8 up there, 12.
We get paid by the word.
We got a lawyer or this. I think that the sentence that Jackie's recommendation is the part at the end of 7.2. That is all of this language. I mean, that's exactly what it is without all that. If we're putting others, reject, and it says exempt from existing, that's.
Yeah, but I had attached that to a sentence that said any ordinance, and now when we created a new sentence, that part is gone, was gone. So we've got to have ordinance in there somewhere.
In addition to referendum/ordinance process?
No, the referendum process is for ordinances. It wouldn't be, a referendum wouldn't be directly for a contract. It would be for an ordinance that approved a contract.
Or salaries done by, city employees, salaries done by ordinance, type of streets. Mr. Walker, I'm sorry.
Well, you're quite all right.
I just had a question.
Hey.
Are city employees' salaries done by ordinance?
No, they're done via the budget ordinance, and not as a line item in the budget, but as appropriations in the annual operating budget. The only other circumstance where salaries would come into play is when we negotiate a work agreement with one of the 7 public employee bargaining units, and you set the, salary rates for those union represented positions. But again, they're not individually identified by name, just by job title.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, how about that language that we have in front of us now? Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Is there a motion to approve that
So
addition of
moved.
that language?
So moved.
Steele makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay, 7.3. The law department gave us some red line language for that, but I wasn't sure if that was what we had asked for.
I think they did great. I think we asked for it wrong.
Okay, that's probably correct.
7.3,
Yeah. That's- I'm not seeing any change needed to that paragraph in 7.3.
that's a good point. Okay, so what Lindsay is reminding me of is the 7.3 language was there under the idea that the contracts went into effect immediately. And so we were showing what the Blue Springs does, because that's how theirs works. So
Okay.
if, based on what you've now done, this, I think,
Isn't necessary.
none of this is applicable anymore, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Anything about those two blurbs, at a minimum, the two blurbs about, well, I guess one of them's in 7.2, but the 7.3 blurb about the Blue Springs language is no longer applicable. What about the edit right here? No, that's not doing that either.
What about the edit on the second page? You got one paragraph there.
Actually, on the bottom of page 33, well, on the bottom of this first page that was handed out to us, you see that there is a strike through of not go into effect, and it's changed to shall be suspended. I just preferred that, but I'm
Oh, okay.
open to change on that too.
That's better words.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it.
It's the paragraph that begins, when a referendum petition with signatures. And yes, that's it. Shall be suspended. Okay, got that. And then on the next page of this handout from the law department, I see that we've also added the language, or until the city council rejects or repeals the ordinance. I think the city council always is going to have that right first when they're notified of a referendum, but I didn't see it anywhere. So we want to add that?
Yes.
Let's back up a second.
Okay.
I guess, unless with that last paragraph on page 33, I think that shall not go into effect is good language. Because remember, we've got the 10 days and then the 30 days, so I think that's good language. I think it's suspended doesn't work because the ordinance
It wouldn't be in effect?
would not be in effect.
But if there's a petition, the way I read it, the action of getting it instated
But if
would be,
but Bruce, if they filed a notice, it wouldn't go into effect. Right?
no, I thought the action of getting it implemented would be suspended, but okay, I understand.
Well, I mean, I think either,
I would agree.
either is okay.
It's up to you all. So,
Oh.
I mean, I think not going into effect is fine language. I think suspended works too. I think it's just up to you all. If you like it how it is, then leave it. If you like suspended
leave it.
better, then change it. I don't think it makes a difference to
I'm
me.
the same way. So, we want to leave it? Change it? So we're just going to leave it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We'll
Before
take out
we-
suspended.
Sorry, before we move off that page, Lindsay pointed out that in 7.2, if you look at, so overall there's a bubble, but within that, there is some red line. The intent of that red line was to clarify some of the issues that were addressed last time. So I think we skipped over that because that bullet or that comment doesn't make a difference anymore, and that's correct. But actually, if you leave 7.2 otherwise, the point of that language was to help clarify. So I would ask that we go back and decide if you all like that or if you think it's okay as it is.
Are you talking about a petitioner's committee? Because
No.
we weren't, we didn't want that.
Right in the pink section, there's some red letters, right?
Yeah, correct.
That's what I mean. But that's what we asked you to put in to clarify.
Right, but we didn't talk about that, because we talked about the comment and then moved on. Are you not seeing it, Jackie?
Oh, we're over there.
Yeah, I'm still in 7.2.
Oh, okay.
It didn't make a difference if you were going, we keep kind of going back and forth on which path we're down. So if we're, back on where you are, where we put it back the way it was, then this language, again, if you all like it, potentially helps to clarify what's there now. If you think it's unnecessary, then it's up to you all.
I'm good either way.
And that's both of them, right? Both sentences you want to add? I'm good.
Yeah, it's good language. Okay, so we're going back to 7.2, which we did vote to add that sentence to the end. And now we're going to take up adding this red line that the law department prepared, just the part that's underlined in red.
In red letters.
In
not
red
the
letters.
box, but
Right.
In red letters, it says L.
Yes.
And that is good.
Okay, does anyone object to adding those?
Motion to adopt.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Lindsay, did you get that?
Freaks me, just hold on a
Okay.
second, you got it? You got it, you're good. I should know, okay, I shouldn't even doubt you.
Are we done with 7.2?
I don't know.
Going back.
30 needs to be spelled out, so it's somewhere else, and then end it with numbers and letters.
So I'm sorry, Lindsay, did we vote on the adding or until the city council repeals the ordinance? Did we vote on that? Okay,
The second part of your,
yeah.
no.
You
Oh,
were
it's
talking
not in
about
line,
that one,
it's-
then you went back, I think,
Yeah.
to the suspended, and because you were back on that page, I wanted to bring up the
Okay.
other issue that we
Okay.
skipped over. So, yeah, we haven't, technically 7 point, that we were discussing the last sentence, the red line sentence at the end of 7.3, or towards the end of 7.3.
Okay, so we were discussing that. I think this was my suggestion, but I don't remember now, to add, that an ordinance will stay suspended or not in effect, and I just suggested we add, or until the city council repeals the ordinance, which it can do on its own at any time. Any comment on that?
Motion to approve that language.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's added. Now, I think we reviewed 7.4 and 7.5 without any recommended changes, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, now we're on 7.6. Lindsay, did we vote on this at the last meeting?
Just a second. You guys are moving quick all of a sudden.
I know, I'm sorry. Take a little break.
Okay, 7.6 is what you're wondering?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Oh, right.
I think the law department kind of helped us with that one, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, 7.6, I'm sorry, the 7.6 language is, you know, some suggested language. It's not, what Lindsay and I discussed was taking out the numbers, because we felt like that was A, confusing, and B, had the potential to cause some issues.
Right.
Especially when you consider certification dates and available elections and all of that. So that's where we ended up was we don't want to just leave it open-ended entirely, because then in theory you could just put it off to an election, 7 years down the road or something. So that's where we've got at the next legally available election, subject to the deadlines as described herein. So in other words, that may be 3 months down the road, or it may be 6 months down the road, kind of depending on when that worked out.
But it's the next legal.
Right, so whenever, but so if, for instance, if this was, let's say this happened in February, after, we already have to have the April election certified, the April election is not the next legally available election. That wouldn't happen until August. So that's, it doesn't mean, calendar, the next one that comes up, it means the next one we can actually utilize, and that's what we were trying to account for.
Okay.
Mr. Cobra, what is subject to the deadlines described herein? What does that mean?
Where's the other one? Okay, that's referring to the 30-day deadlines. There's one in 7.4 and one earlier in 7.6. That's what that line is referring to. If you don't like it or think it's necessary, obviously.
No, it wasn't. I was just trying to.
Yeah.
So the next legally available election date, is there a day? Not.
You say date? Is that what you?
This is the next legally available election.
Sure.
I'm fine with the language proposed by our law department.
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. 7.7.
On 7.7, that's why as part of your packet, you've got what's Lindsay's called sample 77. Oh, sample 7.7? Sample 7.7, that makes more sense. So you had asked about what that looks like. So when this was an ordinance that was not approved, it was the one on the pit bull ban that based on, that had the council opted instead of to change the code, they could have sent it to the voters, and they wanted both options. And so that's what this ordinance did. Again, it was not approved. But this is how, you know, Becky and I kind of, you know, tried as best as we could to follow that language that's in there, but still have a ballot that the county would accept, or that the election board would accept, and that we thought was clear to voters. The red line that's in 7.7 now takes all of that out based on the comments last time that you thought it was unnecessary. So it's up to you all if you like it. I mean, or if you think it's appropriate. This is an example of what it looks like. If you don't think it's appropriate, then you can take it out.
And other places in our charter, do we have described the actual ballot language, right? Have we?
Well,
Well, maybe it's coming up in the recall.
well, you talk about, I know, I mean, we took out the form, there were forms for the, you know, election petition process and all of that you took the forms out. I don't know that we've I'm trying to remember if there was other place somewhere else where we had ballot language. Do you remember?
I am personally fine with taking all of that out, and just in case there might be some change in election procedures, you know, with the advancement of technology, and leaving that to our city attorney, city councilor, law department, to make sure that it complies with current law. So that, I think that's what we're doing by these changes that they have written that for us, or
That's about as simple
leave
as
it
we can
in.
get.
Yeah,
I think the goal behind this was to make sure that the ballot language was clear, but ironically, in doing so, I think there's an argument that it actually potentially makes it unclear.
Yeah.
And because it was sort of a challenge to get this, on this pit bull one, to get something that we thought made sense, but was still compliant with the charter requirements. So I mean,
Okay.
and it's not something obviously we have to do very often, but it was, you know, Becky and I spent some time on this in order to get something we thought, again, was clear and concise and made sense, but still compliant with the charter.
okay, then I think it works to take that out. Because it might cause confusion. So, anyone any discussion on that? Have a motion?
So it would be to enact, well, strike the red language that's struck through.
Yes,
Just
yeah.
do 7.7 as the first.
To be clear, are you
Yeah.
talking about the second and third paragraphs, or just the
Yes.
second paragraph?
Second and third.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that worked. 7.8. This was the, this is where I think we left it with you because there was a question about who does the certification.
Yeah, and, I mean, so it's admittedly currently says that the results are ascertained by the Board of Election Commissioners and certified by the city clerk. But in that, and at least in current practice, that's not what has been done. She gets the results and she then, you know, reports them. There's to the council. They go on as a for information only item. But there's no, I mean, Becky's not certifying anything. That only happens, and I think that's appropriate because, you know, at that point, you know, arguably you have a city employee who has a hand in, you know, certifying the election. That's not really a good plan. So
Okay.
I know that's what it says, but that's not how it's been done, and I don't, at least currently, and I would say that would be the best practice going forward.
Yeah, I think this language is much more in compliance with how they're handled today. Okay, do I have a motion to make those changes?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye? Aye. All opposed? I don't think we had anything else in 7.8, but if anyone does, speak now. I was going to. Find my notes. Okay. 7.9, if there's nothing further on 7.8. 7.9 is where we left off at our last meeting. What? We're-
You go all the way to 7.15.
Okay, so 7.9 is recall. I think my first question would be to this body is whether we want to make a change to the 8% requirement for a recall. I have no recommendation on that. Is everyone okay with leaving that the way it is? The model gave a range, and I think it's within that range.
It is. Did they base the 8% on something? Or did they just pull it out of the air?
Do not know.
If that's a question, I don't know the answer.
Well, what would 8% be in the qualified voters?
Okay, that was the figure I had last time that it's 5,123 is 8%
8% is
today, yeah,
You have to get that many people signed.
yeah. And I take it back, the range in the model charter was,
I was thinking
for
5%.
recall was 10 to 20%.
Oh, okay. That must have been a different number. Something was a 5% number. It must have been
Yeah,
something
for
different.
initiative and referendum, it was 5 to 10%.
Oh, okay. That's what I was
Is
thinking.
this the total of eligible voters?
I believe so. Registered voters.
Registered
Yeah.
voters, so if we only have 8,500 vote, we got 5 candidates, there's 9,000, we got 5 candidates, and there's only 10,000 vote, is the 8%, it's just a total registered that didn't even participate,
No.
get to work on the recall.
It's just
It's not
registered.
voters. It's It's
Yeah.
not people who vote. It is people who are registered to vote.
I recognize that.
Oh, okay.
And
So-
that number, when I called, was 64,039. Yeah, 8% is 5,123. That's for a citywide recall. That would be mayor and council members at large.
Correct.
For a district council member, it's less. I didn't get the district amounts. It would still be 8% of whatever the smaller number is.
I'm good with leaving it in there the way it is.
Anyone want to?
All I
What is
do
it?
is challenge the logic one way or the other. There's gotta be some reason why 8% was selected.
I don't
That-
know.
What's the value of selecting a certain number of people to sign a recall?
Well, I think the whole idea would you want the citizens to have that ability, but you don't want it that low, the lowest number where you could just do basis.
Right.
And at the same time, you don't want to be unreasonably high. So, I don't know, Barbara Clarkson, man, we picked out that number all these years ago. I guess we called Bart up and asked her.
I don't know either, but I hate to vote on something that, well, that's just the way it was before, so let's just continue on.
Well,
And I don't have a problem with the number, actually.
well, I think weighing the two sides of that, as I just discussed, I think it's reasonable.
Jackie, what did you say the suggested range was in the model?
10 to 20 in the model charter, and I prepared this at our last meeting. In the Blue Springs charter, recall is 12% of registered voters. In Lee Summit, recall is 30% of total votes cast
That's exactly
for
where
that
it needs to be if
office.
we want 5 candidates. That's exactly where it needs to be fair. You can go get a whole bunch of people that didn't even participate in the election. Run out the mall or down to your favorite neighborhood and knock somebody out just to play the games.
Bruce,
It should be
say-
exactly that.
say
Whoever
that
voted,
again.
the total of who voted.
I didn't get what you,
So I say we're opening up a percentage to the entire registered voters. And we went over a month ago that we only have 6,000 or 8,000 participate anyway. So why have, remember that all that, we went all the way through there. And so the part of it is, you're gonna let just a registered voter, I think they should be who participated that went and signed off in the election to vote.
well, how would you police that?
You have, when you go vote, don't they check off your address and your voting
I mean,
card?
it's the total people who voted, that's reported.
Total people who voted should be where the
On election day.
8 or 10% comes from.
But will they give, just say it's me, will they give me a copy of who voted so I can go just to get them signatures?
Well, yeah, what I'm getting at is how do we
That's the
know?
question.
When we went to the no primary, how did we know how many voted with such a loss anyway? Somebody has to tell you there's only 8,500 people participating.
Good point, though. I mean, if someone that wants to do a recall for,
Didn't
petition, they
even
have to
vote,
go out
didn't
and
even
get this list of voters and
Yeah.
go run them all down.
The other part, what's what I'm getting at is if we knew to get rid of the primary, how many people were and what a travesty it was for the last 100 years. The other part is, how would you just go get everybody that never participated anyway to get involved in taking a guy out? So if we know that it wasn't worth holding a primary, because we know how many voted, didn't we go through a number each last 4 years, each time we voted, we knew it was 8,000 or 9,000. That should be the percentage of that. Because they're gonna tell you, good, bad, or indifferent. If it was 9,800, you'll know it. Votes have to total at the end of the night.
I mean, this is just for the signatures. This isn't the
I
vote.
totally agree with that. But to recall somebody, to enlist 64,000 possibilities, if I didn't even go to the polls to vote to start with, because I'm gonna sign this to kick John Deere out of here. Well, I didn't really, I just heard it, I didn't like that. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a weak number of turnout, why open it to the whole city?
So just for argument's sake, if, when this charter amendments, when they go to the voters, if the voters vote against removing the primary
That's how this should be addressed as well,
separately,
certainly. If it goes separately, and the voting public says, it's a good package, we got this part we do, we do a standalone vote, primary or not, I think this language should refer accordingly. Just like we've done a couple of other ones, if this and this happens, this should be, you should recognize what you're doing there, but.
I think that's impossible to get the name of the voters who voted.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
But I should be able to sign that referendum if I didn't vote.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
But how do you know that's what I'm saying?
I'm talking about the number of people it would take to take out an elected person, man or woman. So if we're gonna open it up to 64 or 65,000, isn't that what we just talked, registered voters?
Yeah.
And we're only getting about 8,900 each time. How equal is that?
So just for discussion purposes, what kind of percentage are you recommending?
None of this to the total of voters,
No.
not
No.
registered voters.
No, I know,
total.
I understand what you're saying, but if you're saying, then we just take the,
8%,
Eight-
or whatever number we agree to.
okay, that's what I'm asking you. What would you recommend as a percentage if we used just the number of people who voted?
10%.
So that would be around 1,000. It would only take 1,000 signatures to get a recall.
Yes. If it's only gonna take 1,000 people to get somebody elected, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that,
1,000 seems way too
So does it get the.
frugal.
see, that seems confusing to me, because if you have, let's say, 10,000, keep the math simple. If you have 10,000 people that do vote, and we didn't have a primary, and an individual won with the most votes, right? Let's say, a little over half. We're only gonna have a small portion that can recall. They're the ones who voted no to start with.
Yeah, but my position is, are you gonna get everybody involved that never took the time to vote to start with?
No, I agree with that too, that, no, you wouldn't, that'd be very easy to get the
I just
numbers,
can't-
but,
Bruce, I'm having difficulty with the nuts and bolts of this. I'm listening, but I'm with Casey. I just can't get the nuts and bolts. You're saying though that only the people that actually voted.
Of the number, I can't go down to the Allender hat, that's not what I'm getting at.
Just the number.
If there's 9,100 voters, and we'll know that morning or that night, you have to know the results of the election, right? 2,700 to whatever it was, anything. And you add those two together, and you have to have a certain amount of people from the total that voted in the election for the
So
elected
you're saying
official.
in the general election, if there's 30,000 that voted, then the percentage of that would be what it would take for a recall.
That's right.
but that's confusing to me, because if the election, wasn't that skewed, it'd be really easy. Every time I lose, I get to go through a referendum out there to recall.
And that's exactly where I was on the primary thing. I could go get 1,500 people to vote for me every single time out of maybe Ramsgate, Thomas Shaw, and the Cup, every single time to keep a person from getting in there, but we got rid of that. So my part is, do you open that to anybody at Independence Center, all the nursing homes, and we run down to Shady Pines and all this stuff, and then get these signatures turned in? And then we go, okay, well, I never got to vote anyway, but yeah, let's get somebody out there.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right either. It just seems like the whole system is skewed in my brain. Yeah. Zach, give us your thoughts. I mean, how does that work?
So this is one that we've had more experience with than some of the other items we've talked about. There's been a number of recall efforts against sitting members of the council. None of those, to my knowledge or recollection, were successful. The threshold was not met in any of those circumstances. So I think, as I forget which one of you said it, I think it's intentionally difficult to try to, so that it doesn't become I didn't like how that elected official voted on that issue, so let's recall them and, throw them out. I think it's trying to make it harder so that, as a citizen, you have to compel your fellow peers, here's a really egregious thing that's happened that merits having a recall election in the city.
And that's where I'm at with it, is totally agree with that. It shouldn't be you could have the same 1,200 or 1,500 people each time to keep Joe Thompson out there every time. Or recall him, so I totally agree. It should be difficult. It shouldn't be that easy to limit the ability to be able to function. It has to be a hard thing to do. And my part is, anybody on a shopping spree or whatever, they go get a bunch of people that weren't involved to start with. How far are you involved in the recall? How much do you know? Or do you just not like the guy because his fence is taller than yours? It's just
But you could secure every no vote that voted originally, couldn't you?
Sure you do. Or area.
It's like we're redoing the same election again, but we're allowing the no's to recall. Just because I didn't get my way, I'm going to recall. That could literally happen.
That's exactly right. think
Seems
it should
like
be
a
limited
wrong
to the
system.
people, or the number of votes.
But if you go to the qualified voters and just say, I do a no vote, and I got elected 7 years ago, you gotta go back 7 years to pick out who voted at that time? Why wouldn't you just go with the qualified voters as it states, as it is today?
So the Lee Summit language, I don't know if this is exact, but it was a recall requires 30% of the total votes cast for that office. So that would be at the last election.
That's the language we want.
That, and I would agree with that, not the 10%. That's too low.
No,
30%.
Well,
30% I would agree with.
The number isn't the issue. 30%, I'm good with that.
Well, you said 10% of 10,000 is only 1,000.
And we were, yeah,
Yeah.
I would have to, okay, then I'll withdraw that and say,
Okay.
as we've discussed this, and the support for the language from Lee Summit, I would go with the 30% or 40 to, so
Yeah.
it's not something that happens every, it has to be something.
That makes much more sense. Yep.
Let me make sure that's correct.
Did that cover it? Voted in the last election.
Closer.
Okay, Lindsay, do you have the Lee Summit charter? It's page 19, 10.3 petitions. Okay, can everyone see that? It's, number of petitions. Yeah, A3. That's the Lee Summit charter language for recalls.
Bingo.
That works.
Yep.
I'd make a motion to adopt that as our recall language.
And let me just make sure I understand, Mr. Frake, do you want this change tied to, this is not our decision, this will be the council's decision, but tied to approval of removal of the primary? So if you vote to remove the primary, you're also voting to change the recall or not? Do you want those completely separate?
I think they should run parallel
Sep-
to each other. I mean,
They should be connected?
I believe that's right. If the public, if it comes to a vote and it is standalone, if that's what they want as a package, and the council approves it, and they vote on a standalone section to our charter submission, and for instance, the standalone vote is we leave the primaries in. Just say that's an example. Wouldn't this language fit that scenario?
I mean, we can have this language no matter what we do with primaries, but I thought you were saying,
So my part
was
is,
tied.
if it's a primary, does this fit that? If in fact that's what the,
I don't know. I don't think Lee Summit has primaries.
I think it has to do with the people who participated in the election. I think that's what that
Okay,
language says.
so I think I'm gonna recommend that we don't link this to the
I don't think they need to.
primary
Yeah, I think we
language.
I agree, I don't
Yeah.
think it, I mean,
Okay.
I don't think it has anything to do with the crime.
Okay, all right, I wanted to be
It's
clear
just
about that.
But we can make it capital.
Make it however you want it to read.
Or not. Like I said, that wouldn't be our decision in any case, that's the city council.
Yeah, I would make a motion to adopt the recall language from that chart, from Lee Summit's charter. I think it's brief and I think it covers any scenario for a recall in the election numbers.
Are we still discussing?
Yes,
Okay, so that language means if it's 30% of the total numbers of votes cast for the office, that means we're gonna go from 8% to 30% for at-large and for mayor. That's a really big number.
That's true. That's true. It would apply to both citywide elections.
If we use that exact language.
Wouldn't that be the idea? Is to make it, you have to work for it if that's what you want, or you're just not mad that that guy has a bigger fence than you have.
Well, I think
Not
work for it's one
privacy.
thing, impossible is another.
So the at-large
As for,
is a citywide vote as well, is that right or wrong?
Right.
So I think it's comparable. I think that's fair language for both offices.
actually, it would be for, also for
In
individual,
district?
in
In
district, yeah.
Well, it'd be 30% of the people that voted in the district, isn't that correct? Because
Yes,
you
for
would have
that seat, that person that you're trying to
recall.
recall.
Sorry, that percentage number may be smaller than the 8% number.
That's right.
What we're doing is effectively reducing the bar to recall someone.
Only for
Because if you're
the
looking
district.
at 64,000 is how many registered voters we have? I don't know. 8% of that is almost 5,000 votes. And if you're looking at 9,000 votes that voted in the last election, am I just making that up? I thought I heard that. You're only looking at 2,700 votes. So at 30% of the, and I tend to agree with it, that it's going to actually lower the bar for recall.
I did misspeak, that's not 8 to 30, you're right, that's not apples to apples.
Right.
Well, my position is that they didn't participate in the election to start with. How important is it? I think that, you know, if they go, well, I don't really care for that. I think the numbers should be higher. I think everybody, that's about all we got left is the right to vote. And I think that if they don't participate, the numbers should reflect it. Maybe it will get higher turnout. But the 30% is exactly that, 30% or 8. But I think it's a harder threshold to meet.
I guess what I'm confused is, are you saying that only the people that voted can participate in the recall?
No.
No.
You're
The
saying-
the total number of
You're
votes.
just saying if they voted or not, they can still participate in the recall?
Yeah, if it's a 9,100 turnout, you take 30% of that to recall at-large or mayor, or
To have a,
30% of your district.
To
turnout,
submit
but
a-
the numbers are gonna be there on Channel 4 that night before they finish the night.
it's to submit a petition.
Submit a
to
petition for a
to
recall.
recall.
So what if you only have a thunderstorm or something, you have 500 voters that day?
You get 30, that's right, well, if, right, I mean, we talked about that,
Or it snows in April?
yeah, May 3rd, about 5, 8 years ago.
150 folks, you're done.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Any other discussion?
Let's put a sentence in there about the weather. I'm totally teasing. I mean, because that is fair. What you get, and if it's an off year, sometimes people just flat don't show up.
Right. I guess my question is does the model go off of registered voters, or did it go off of from the last election?
It looks like what's current.
Registered.
Okay.
The margin, it looks like it's current is the registered.
Yeah, the model charter did have a range of registered voters. And that was 10 to 20% was their recommendation, and ours is 8
Of registered versus
of registered
total
voters.
votes.
Mhm. Yes. I think we need a vote, and you want to make the motion to make that change to adopt.
Well, in my listening to everybody, it seems like it's half dozen, 1 to 6 of the other, and just kind of leave it the way it is. That seems fair.
This actually makes it twice as easy to do a recall. Lee Summit, just based on the math that I'm running, it would only require 2,400 votes. Signatures versus our model that would be 5,100 votes. And so there's a big difference between 5,000 plus and 2,500. So we are making it much, at least Summit makes it much easier. And I don't know if that's the goal of this discussion.
The part is the participation. We went over 4 days and then redid it 2 weeks later. People don't participate anyway. So we're looking at 65,000 registered voters and we decided about 9 participate, 9,000.
Yeah, it's a more limited pool, but
That's what I'm saying.
I was only going to add, I said a moment ago that I was aware of a number of efforts to recall members of the council in the last several years here in Independence. I'm only aware of one circumstance in Lee Summit, to Mr. Latham's numbers, so there may have been others, but that effort was successful. It was successful to have the recall election.
It's the 30% of the total votes in the election.
I forget the numbers, the percentages. I just know that the voters did successfully obtain the requisite number of signatures to hold the recall election.
And he was recalled in Lee Summit.
If they took that much effort.
So that's the only one that's the only one I can think of in the metro area in, the last few years is that one in Lee Summit.
Sometimes if you look at the, I'll have to look that up, but my part of it is I'm usually pretty up on that. But if they went to that much effort to do that, to get somebody recalled and then follow through with it, there was probably an issue. I would say you can refer, Independence is quite a drop in the bucket, but California's Gray Davis and all that stuff that went down out there when they did that in a matter of less than a couple of months, if I remember right. That was pretty full, so.
Okay, I'm gonna just throw this out. Is this something
And you don't have to-
does anyone want to take this under advisement and look at it again at our next meeting? Or do you want to go ahead and,
Let's do it. Let's leave it like that.
vote?
I think we've opened one door, we should leave that door open.
Any thought on that? It's kind of a big decision.
A motion that we take it under advisement and meet at our next meeting.
And
Gives us time
okay.
to think it over.
Is everyone okay with
If
that?
I'm still
Give it
alive
some
from
thought,
the
maybe look at
frostbite.
other charters?
It's cold there.
Anyone's got a birthday next month? Okay, let me make a note. Lindsay, don't let me forget. Come back to 7.9.
No more cookies for Bruce.
Happened last time too.
Red Bull in here.
Okay. Is there anything else in 7.9 that anyone's concerned about changing besides that?
My notes show it was attached to 2.3 for some reason.
7.9 is?
Yeah, I don't know why though. Do you know why?
Yeah.
2.3?
Oh, you see it, 2.3.
Qualifications? I don't know, I don't.
My notes are probably just wrong.
Do you think it's there, those two sections are related? Mr. Cover? I can't read it.
We're gonna say no.
Okay.
That's our final answer. I've used my lifeline and I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, it does talk about impeachment, which I don't even remember if we discussed impeachment. Okay. Okay, we're gonna come back to 7.9 again at the next meeting. 7.10, submission at election. I just had a note. I don't know if I've already said this, but how much, do we need to look at how much time the election board needs to cancel an election? It seems like those wheels would not grind to a stop very quickly.
I would agree. We could just say, the election, if a special election shall be canceled if allowed by law or something like that. If that's, the concern is, I mean, yeah, so, obviously there are other statutes and issues at play. If that's, that we may not, even if that qualifies under the charter to cancel it, doesn't mean
that we can.
Doesn't mean that we can.
I mean, and we may not need to add anything to
It's up to, I mean, that's up to you all.
because I think, isn't there some general language somewhere that says if it doesn't, it's not possible under the
Yeah.
law that it,
You can't do it.
okay, so I'm not
Okay.
gonna recommend that change. It was just a question I had. Is there any other discussion on 7.10?
Well, does that language need to be the same as what was recommended on 7.6 at the next legally available election?
That,
Not necessarily.
that's up to you all. I can't say, again, because we haven't, I mean, there is the potential for an issue, just like there was before. So we haven't had the situation, since I've been around, and I think in, some time, there hasn't been a recall that's actually gone that far. Unlike the other, the pit bull situation where we were, actually had to write the ordinance to put it on there. So, I mean, in theory, there's the potential to have an issue with the 30-day to 90-day window
Right.
because of the election
Yeah.
calendar. So
Yeah.
I mean, and if we're gonna change it in one, I think it makes sense
Okay.
to change in the other, but that's
I
up to you
agree,
all.
I agree.
Next available.
So you
So
got
if you
the-
can just kind of copy and paste that language.
what's coming out of
7.6?
7.6, yeah. The next legally available election. I don't think you need that.
So just take out.
Yeah, there's no deadlines. So it's gonna go, at a special election to be held at the next legally available election. To the city clerk, period, take that out.
Yeah, yeah, okay, thanks.
Is that what you wanted?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. Is there a motion to approve that? Second? All in favor of that change, vote yes. Say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Sorry. Opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, 7.11. This is another one of those where it's got the ballot language in it. I actually thought it was okay, but if we've taken every other ballot language provision out, I'm okay with that too.
I mean, I would agree, it's relative to the other sections, it's actually much more clear.
It is,
It
yeah.
does have that last paragraph that you all seem to not like about the voting machines.
Oh,
So it's,
Yeah,
I guess if, I would say, I think it would be a good idea to remove that, at least the last paragraph. If you're okay with the rest of it, you can leave it. If you want to make it consistent with the
Right.
other section, I think it would be okay either way. It's not, it's not problematic, in my opinion, like some of the other languages. been.
right. And I think it's almost necessary that it be worded this way.
I don't know that it would be worded any other way.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Is everyone okay with taking out that last paragraph about voting machines? Yeah. Okay, we can strike that. Is there a motion to strike that last paragraph?
Make a motion.
Second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. 7.12, effective vote. I had no problem with this language. Anyone else? Okay, 7.13, recall limitations. I also had no, go ahead.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you go back to 7.12,
Yes.
it does have what Lindsay on my right was pointing out. It does have language that talks about being to the city clerk and certified by the
It
clearly
does,
clear,
yeah.
which we took, changed previously and again, don't think is accurate.
Right, yeah.
Well, there you go. You, Lindsay, are on the same page.
And how did we
So
change it?
certified by the Board of Election Commissioners. I think we would actually just certified by the Board of Election Commissioners to the city clerk,
Refer
period.
to the city clerk. That's what you said on the last one, refer to the city clerk.
Or, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you want to add refer, I mean, either way, it's the, I think it's, yeah, I think we had, what we had referred, is that what we had in the other one, Lindsay?
Yep. 7.8, referred to.
Yeah, referred by.
And then certified by
Yeah.
the city clerk.
So you want,
So it says the commissioner will take it to the city clerk to certify what they certify, right?
certified by the Board of Election Commissioners and referred to the city clerk. No, wait, you get, are certified by the Board of Election Commissioners.
Should we
and
strike
referred
to the city clerk?
And referred to the city clerk, and then get rid of everything else.
Yeah.
Just, and refer, yeah, you already have the rest of it.
I just made it way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All we're really adding is and referred.
Just take out to the city clerk.
Okay, we're,
Give me a moment, please.
Too many people. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going back to the preamble next week.
Okay.
so I think it should read, the votes are certified by the Board of Election Commissioners and referred, add and referred. Okay, then after city clerk right there, eliminate the rest of the sentence. That's what I think it should be, but they may
Yes.
feel differently.
Okay.
Yep.
Other
Looks
Lindsay,
good.
what you think?
Yeah, Lindsay, on the right.
The whole panel agrees.
Yeah, or motion to approve that change?
I make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now, 7.3, recall limitations. Anyone have any changes to 7.13?
Do any of the other documents that we refer to, the model or Lee Summit or Blue Springs, do they have a limitation like this?
I did not check.
Seems like there's a lot of, I'm on base, you can't touch me.
Let me see.
I guess I'm a little confused on 710. Isn't there some timing involved there that conflicts, or am I reading that wrong? The timing on 710 is.
We took that out.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
It talks about the majority of the registered qualified voters voting on a question of recall. But the other wording we were looking at changing when
Right.
in 7.9, that they're kind of tied.
Yeah, we would need to look at that at the same time at the next meeting.
Yep.
On the recall, on the 7.13?
Yes.
I guess the only difference I would have with that, Wes, is that 7.09 is about initiating the recall, and the 7.13 is the actual election. Of all, everybody that's available to vote, they either recall them or they don't recall. I do think there's a difference there.
So if there is a valid petition to recall, it goes to the voters don't approve it, then they can't there cannot be another recall petition for 180 days after that election.
Right? This talks about a majority of the registered qualified voters.
That's the same as we left, or we're going to revisit.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's why I think that needs to be revisited, just
We
because
will,
of that.
yeah. Let me make a note. But as far as the 180 days, is everyone okay with that, or do you want to, I found Lee Summit.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, well, it doesn't deal with if they remain in office. But if they are removed, they are ineligible to be appointed or elected to serve as a city official in any capacity at any time during the remainder of the term that they were elected. That's if they are removed, which is 7.14. And we've got 2 years. So it doesn't, Lee Summit didn't deal with this 180 days. They didn't address that.
I don't
have
understand
a
the
problem
logic
with it.
for the days. I mean, if someone does something egregious enough, within 120 days, I mean, they need to be recalled.
But if they have a recall and they don't get, the recall doesn't pass, somebody else could just go file another one and start the whole process.
No,
over again.
I'm not challenging that at all.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is up here at the front part is, you can't initiate an incumbent in office until he's had at least 120 days in office. And I don't know that that's appropriate.
Well, I could see how somebody gets elected and people are unhappy about it, they'd immediately file a recall petition. So then what happens to that person that just got elected? Are they on hold? Do they fill the position until? I don't know.
So what now?
Well, the point of it, I think, is when someone gets elected and someone else is angry about them, you go ahead and immediately file a recall petition and just keep everything in a big.
In limbo.
So, you know, give them a little grace period before that happens, and the other provision, 180 days before the term is over, that makes sense too. Why do it when they're not done?
They're about done, yeah.
Yeah, starting to recall because of the results. of a legal election, and then the 180 days prior to the end of the term is a waste to even start that procedure.
I think the idea is that it forces you to give them a chance. You may think you don't like this candidate's going to be awful, but you know, by having this forced 120-day waiting period, you've got to actually see. You can't just go off, you know, the campaign and the election. It forces, you know, the constituency to actually see how they vote and how they govern and see what they do. So a cooling off period. There you go. Before you're allowed to, you know, start fighting again. So, I mean, I think that's the intent. Whether you all think it's necessary or not is your call.
I agree with it.
Yeah. Give them time to screw up before you recall them.
I thought they cool 40 days.
Okay, is there a motion to make any changes to that? Okay, was that was 7.13, 7.14. This is if they are recalled or they resign, they cannot hold any office or be employed by the city for 2 years. Anyone want to change that? All
I'm
right.
just thinking of 2 years, if they were elected to an office that their term is longer than 2 years, should it be 2 years or to the end of their term, whichever's greater?
I like that, to the end of the term.
Well, the recall is gonna be a half a year into that. And the 2 years, man, I mean, I think the wording takes you to the end of the term, 180 days. And so to have the next legal election cycle, am I thinking right?
4 years?
Well, I
About
guess
3.5 years, if it went into the year and a half and then a 2 year cycle.
it would just depend on when this started. I mean, there is this. I mean, if you had somebody who they got this ball rolling on day 121 of their first year of a 4-year term, then yeah, you could go through this whole process and not even and be arguably within the first calendar year, and then they're out. I think then technically on their term is still 3 years left, but but this that would allow them to come back, not in that position in theory, because that would then be filled by a special election. So that spot would be gone, but in theory they could run again, before that. They would have otherwise been able to had their term been completed, if that makes sense. So it would have to start at fairly early on in their term to not hit that 2 years.
Well, Ms. Cover, I was wondering, and I don't know, whether, it says that they can't be employed by the city. That's a whole different issue than having an elected office. I wonder if there's some law about that, because it would seem that that'd be a little onerous to punish someone and say they can't even be employed by the city for a period, a greater period than 2 years. Is there some law out there regarding that?
Oh yeah.
Was that dealt with in the ethics code?
Well, there's limitations there in terms of when someone can do certain things after they've been in office, but it doesn't get into people who are, removed or subject to removal from office. I mean,
Because I thought we had some stuff in here that they can't be employed and elected anyway. Aren't we already in that?
one after you have been a city official, there are certain waiting periods before you can come back and do certain things with the city, in paid positions. Those don't get into, for one thing, both of those, I think, and Mr. Casey may have some familiarity with this. I don't think any of those are as long as 2 years, is my recollection. I think most of them are a year, although I can't say that for sure without looking at it. But either way, those, so those are going to apply to anyone who has held office and then isn't holding office. So whether you resign or your term ends, or in theory you're impeached, these are essentially special rules for someone who is either recalled or where recall proceedings have been initiated. I can't say, Mr. Allender, that there is some, I mean, again, as a charter city, I think, I don't necessarily see a problem that's saying you can't be employed. I'm not saying somebody couldn't come up with an argument that says otherwise, it hasn't been an issue. I think, my guess is, again, part of it is, if that person is either recalled or resigns while subject to recall, that, we're saying, okay, for the next 2 years, we just don't want you associated with the city. Now, whether that's fair or appropriate is up to you all. I think that's the idea. I can't say for sure that it wouldn't create an issue, but nothing jumps out at me.
John, are you saying that we might be violating some employment
Well,
laws?
I don't know. I mean, there's,
I can see that.
when you start restricting someone's ability to be employed, that can be a big deal.
Right.
There's one thing to say they can't be a city official, that's one thing, but then be an employee, that's another. I don't know.
Well,
I can see that.
you could, I mean, if you,
Smell test kind of.
if that was the part that was, making anyone uncomfortable, I mean, essentially may hold any elected or appointed office in the city government within 2 years. That would apply to obviously mayor and city council, but also, any of the boards, commissions, anything like that, but not preclude someone from having from being a paid employee of the city. So if that's more.
Maybe I'm going out of a dead fish or something, just kind of stinking things up. It just kind of jumped out at me.
I get it, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I think it could kind of go either way.
I could see it if it was recalled, but I kind of don't see it if it's a resign. Maybe that's the purpose. A person resigns because they have a job opening for the city and they want to take that job. I mean, but we're a fourth-class city when I sat in Sugar Creek. I was under city council and I resigned, and the next week I was put back in as deputy chief, but that's a fourth-class city too, so.
I think there can be some arguments of discrimination if you really, from employment practice.
Yeah.
Because I'd say take that out.
I'll just read what Blue Springs has. Any such person who has been recalled shall be ineligible to serve in the city or any capacity at any time during the remainder of the term for which the official was originally elected. So it says any capacity, so I think that also is
But
employment.
They also took out the word resign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now this, just to note, this does say resigned from office while recall proceedings were pending.
It's not right. So I would say the resignation piece of this only applies if recall proceedings are initiated and then they're like, I don't want to mess with this.
Right.
I'm just going to quit. Then this comes into play. As opposed, it doesn't apply to just a regular resignation.
I think it does.
What?
I think it does.
You think it does?
It says who has been recalled or who has resigned while the proceedings were pending.
Yeah, that's right. It's not the proceedings for a recall opinion.
Yeah,
If there was
this-
no recall, somebody could resign.
If they resign in the middle of it, then they didn't get recalled. Right?
Right. I'm saying it doesn't apply to a resignation absent any recall proceedings. Yeah.
Okay, yes, I agree. I understand.
Does that make sense? Okay,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so if you were resigning under pressure, when their signature's being turned in and they're working on it, that's when this triggers that threshold. Otherwise, if you resign to become the deputy chief in a week, that's a different story.
Well, should this little paragraph here be split into recall or resigning? Like A and B part,
I
or?
think this covers it. If the person recalled or resigning. Based on the recall, resigning.
But only based on the recall?
That's how I
Yeah,
read it.
right, that's how I read it too.
Who has
Okay.
resigned while the proceedings.
And which is understandable. I mean,
Sure.
would hate to have my name on a ballot to be recalled.
I'm kind of backing off because I read the language again and it says employment in the city government. So I think that doesn't include driving the dump truck.
You don't think it does?
So
All right, is there any motion to make an amendment to 7.14? No? Okay. So 7. What do we have? Oh, this is our last one. 7.15, initiative referendum and recall charter provisions to apply. I think this is just some general language that probably doesn't.
Well, there's a little bit on the last page, it rolls over.
Oh, did I miss it?
It's almost like a form. Unless we're recycling paper.
I don't see it.
Oh.
I don't see it.
Okay, what Lindsay on my right is saying is that what's on this last page actually goes with section 711.
Yeah. Yeah, we're almost, we've only got one final section, 7.15.
And it's a small paragraph.
And it's very small, and it's just, I think, just some general language. Does anyone want to move to make changes to that?
I love that section.
I
think
love
it's
it
the
too.
best in this
I agree.
charter.
Can't we finish 7.9 so we
I think as a happy birthday to Pat, we're gonna say that one today.
Okay, any objections to stopping here? Okay.
None heard in the crowd.
Okay, so we've got a few things we're gonna come back to in Article 7. We are definitely going to get to Article 8. And again, this is one that I had asked our city manager to maybe have some input on. Anyone here who has financial budgetary experience, definitely need your input on this. That would not be me. It's a fairly short article. I'd like to go ahead and get started on Article 9. I don't know if anyone had a chance to start reading this. I am going to be sending out there was a recommendation, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this about Article 9, I believe in our original memo we got from the city manager to just delete this entire article because it's in the code. I have some general, just one paragraph language that I found that I'm gonna have Lindsay send to you, hopefully tomorrow or sometime within the next couple of days, just to look at, and, we'll discuss it further.
Somebody went to a lot of trouble in section 9
They
to list
definitely
out
did.
everything.
When is our next meeting?
Oh, when is our, next meeting?
That's something we need to
We'll take a
discuss, so it's,
It'd be shorter, so
would
we have
fall
to-
on the Tuesday after Labor Day, but city council meet, I have reserved this room for Thursday the 7th. Don't know if that works with everyone's schedule, but I wanted to make sure we at least had a space available.
Did you say Thursday, the 7th?
Yes.
Does anyone know right now if they have a problem with that date?
So to be clear, at least we're gonna be meeting here at least for a while.
Okay.
The ICU, they believe there was an electrical.
I use.
What did I say? ICU? Whichever.
We may need the
Same
ICU.
Yeah, they think there was a electrical surge at IUC, and so it actually, it kept, I think our meeting last time was really when they first started to figure it out, it actually got worse after that. And so there is no way to currently do the broadcast and everything that we do for your meetings
Okay.
at that, so they're going to be here at City Hall until further notice.
Okay, question.
I've got a question too.
Our next meeting's the 29th of August.
We meet first and third Tuesdays.
Oh, so that's a freebie?
5th is a freebie.
I thought with us being extended, we'd use up all the other Tuesdays we could, but if that's a freebie, that's good.
So what Lindsay was saying is, your meeting should be on Tuesday, September 5th.
And-
But because of Labor Day, the council is in here on the 5th, and so that's why she's looking at Thursday the 7th right now.
And they have night court on Wednesdays.
Yeah, so we're limited. We can only meet here right now, so it can be live broadcast, right?
So, the 29th, we're not having one?
No,
No.
Oh, that is the, yeah, that is.
Would it be possible for someone to look at the temperature in this room? It is ice cold over here. I know that you appreciate that, but if I die again, I don't want COVID again. But it is really cold over here.
We'll check on that.
Is everyone else cold? Is everyone else cold? Because I think IUC is way colder than here.
It's freaking cold.
Are you colder here?
Yeah, he's colder here than back there. It's cold in this corner.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's an intentional thing.
It is. They're trying to ice you out.
Yeah, I use,
okay, so at the next meeting, we're gonna start on, well, we'll go back to the couple of things we had in 7. We're gonna go through Article 8, hoping we can get through the entire thing. Article 9, hoping we can get through that entire thing. I'd also ask, if you can, let's start on 10 to get as much done as we can. So go ahead and prepare for 10. I don't know how far we'll get in that.
Well, I think the 1.9 is the budget one, correct?
Yeah,
We're really gonna need city manager or
Absolutely.
someone's input on
yeah.
how that monster's.
I mean, it's not real long, but yeah, absolutely.
When you're talking finance, it can be, yeah.
So then we do decide we're gonna do September 7th?
Yes. Here at 5 o'clock. Any other business to discuss?
So 3 weeks from today, here, or 3 weeks from Thursday, here.
Right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.